This happened in the summer of 1989. In one of the most inaccessible regions of southwestern Alaska. Far from roads, settlements, and any tourist routes. Our geological survey team was working under contract with a private company, acting as a subcontractor for the U.S. Geological Survey. We were studying soil and rock anomalies on one of the islands of Lake Iliamna, the largest freshwater lake in Alaska. Officially, the island was listed on maps as Hawkins Island, but the local Aleut people called it something else. A short word that roughly translated as the place you do not go. An Alaskan summer is short and deceptively calm. It stays light almost around the clock, but the weather can change within hours. And a helicopter is the only connection to the mainland. We work 10 to 12 hours a day, trying to finish the season before the first autumn storms. After 2 weeks, even the toughest guys were wearing down, and the team leader finally called a day off. Some people washed clothes in the creek. Others repaired equipment. A couple of guys played cards in a tent. And I, Michael Carter, a geologist with a hunting background, took my Remington 700, checked the ammo, and early in the morning headed toward the northern slope of the island. After 2 weeks, everyone was sick of freeze-dried food and canned meat. Mountain goats lived in those areas, and fresh meat would have been a real gift. About an hour and a half later, I reached a relatively flat area. Thin forest, young spruce trees, low brush. That's where I heard a sound I still remember too clearly. A quiet, dry snap of a branch, about 30 meters ahead of me. I stopped and slowly took the rifle off safety. Something was moving toward me. Judging by the steps, it was large and moving without much caution. It wasn't a bear, they moved differently. Not a moose. Not a wolf. I could clearly hear breathing. A few seconds later, the branches parted, and it stepped into the open. The moment I saw it, my body went cold. Something stood in front of me that looked human only in shape. Yellowish skin, with brown, corpse-like blotches. The skull looked almost bare. Lips barely there. Eyes too wide, without any familiar human expression. It was wearing a gray jacket and dark pants. Clothes that looked like some kind of work uniform. It lasted only a few seconds. The creature let out a hoarse groan. Not a scream. A groan. And suddenly bolted into the forest. Fear demanded only one thing: turn around and run. But professional curiosity won. I followed the trail. A couple of hours later, the forest ended abruptly. Ahead of me was a wide clearing, hidden deep inside the island, like the bottom of a bowl. There were about a dozen low buildings, several barracks, a couple of houses, utility sheds. The roofs were flat, covered with thick moss. Some buildings and yards were hidden under camouflage netting. The entire clearing was surrounded by barbed wire. In the center was a circular helicopter landing zone. I saw people. They came out of a barack in groups, wearing the same gray uniforms. as the creature in the forest. They moved slowly, almost silently, heads lowered. Near one of the buildings, they were met by a man in military uniform. No insignia, a holster on his belt. I raised my binoculars, and my hands started shaking. They were monsters. Their skin had unnatural colors. Dirty yellow, sickly pink, greenish gray. Their bodies were deformed from birth, not from injuries. Some had 3 fingers on each hand. Others had no ears, only small holes in the skin. Some had no noses at all, just a flat ridge where it should have been. But the worst part came next. A group of children came out of the barack. Smaller, thin, with the same distorted features. They were born this way. A few minutes later, I noticed something that didn't make sense at first. Another group exited a 3rd barack. And this time, I knew immediately. These were people. Normal people. No deformities. Normal skin. Proportional bodies. Alert, conscious eyes. And that terrified me more than anything else. Their hands were bound with thin metal chains. Not handcuffs, chains. Short, but strong. They walked unevenly. Some were limping. Some kept looking around, as if searching for help. There was twice as much security around them. Men in the same unmarked military uniforms. Weapons. Dogs on leashes. And then it hit me. The ones I had called monsters didn't need that level of control. No one was afraid of them. But these people, they were afraid of. Cold sweat ran down my back. I suddenly realized I wasn't an observer anymore. I was an unwanted witness. Someone who had seen what was never meant to be seen. Everyone was herded toward a single building. Low, windowless, with a massive metal door. A man came out. A doctor, judging by his actions, but without a lab coat. The same military uniform. No insignia. He worked in silence. Injection. Test tube. Another injection. Sometimes he lingered longer. Drawing blood. Examining it carefully. Making notes. In some tubes, the liquid looked different. Thicker. Darker. Then he pulled out a device. A familiar clicking sound. A dosimeter. Something inside me snapped. There was no mistake. I had worked in the field too long to confuse that sound. He was checking radiation levels on everyone when he selected one adult creature and 2 children and led them inside. I realized I was gripping my rifle so hard. My fingers ached. I felt physically sick. I was about to leave. Right then. Quietly. Slowly. Without breathing. But the first one to notice me wasn't human. A dog. A low growl. Then barking, sharp, vicious. like it tore through the air itself. The settlement, silent until that moment, came alive instantly. I jumped up and ran. I didn't hear shouting. I didn't hear commands. Only the sound of footsteps behind me. When I looked back the first time, everything inside me clenched. They weren't guards. It was them. Creatures in gray uniforms. And several of those colored, distorted ones. They ran silently, not gasping, not watching their footing. They moved in a line, as if they knew the terrain better than I did. That's when I understood. They weren't hunting. They were performing a function. When two figures appeared ahead of me, just a few dozen meters away, I stopped thinking. I fired. The first one fell, as if it had tripped. The second was thrown backward. I didn't look. I ran. But when I glanced back, already on the slope, a pure, primal terror hit me. They were getting up. Slowly. Awkwardly. But they were still coming. I fired again. And again. Then I started climbing the rocks, tearing my hands, smashing my knees, feeling my body refuse to obey. By the time I reached the top, I had nothing left. I turned around and saw them almost behind me. But something was different now. Their steps were unsteady. Their movements slow. One fell, then the other. I waited. Minutes stretched into eternity. When I finally approached them, there was no fear left. Only emptiness. They were dead. Back at camp, no one believed me. No helicopter was called. We simply finished the season and flew out. The island disappeared. From my contracts, from conversations, from reports. Today, I'm certain of one thing. It was a closed reservation, created for those who couldn't be cured, but couldn't be released either. And if they exist there, then somewhere else, others exist too.